being the Big Ten, and just all about how you respond, and how you bounce back.
You mentioned you knew a couple people over on that Michigan State team. Who from them do you have a relationship with? What are your ties to them?
So I know somebody just transferred there, Anthony Penance. We played high school football together, and that's my guy. So, I'm excited. Obviously, I want him to play well every game except for when he plays us. But I wish him the best. It's gonna be fun to compete.
This is the first time you two have crossed paths since high
school?
school?
Yeah, this is the first time we've crossed paths, so I'm excited. I'm really excited.
What kind of challenges have you seen from Michigan State's offense on film so far?
Yeah, they got a great group of receivers, talent. They got, I think a great depth of running backs. They got 3 guys who I think you could, say which one of them is running back 1. And I think, the challenge too is they got 2 really good quarterbacks. We're not exactly sure who's going to be playing, but I think, kudos to them. They got 2 guys who can get the job done and execute at a high level. So I think we're going to have to be on our toes. It's Michigan State, man. They're talented all around, but, how can we play together? How can we be on the same page? And how can we out-physical them every snap?
What do you remember about going against Aiden Charles last season?
Yeah, I remember, he was an elusive guy. I guess the only comparison I could give him is maybe like Lamar Jackson. He's like a skinnier quarterback too, not a lot of meat on his bones. So you really got to make sure you wrap him up well, secure the tackle. But no, he was a good leader. It seemed like, everybody was bought in behind him, and he was really good at facilitating their offense. And the same thing goes for their other quarterback. I think he's a good quarterback too. He does a good job in the pocket, delivering the ball. So yeah.
Kirk talks a lot about leadership on this team. Have you noticed the leadership, and you're probably one of them, and trying to keep the team rallied for the final 2 games and not trying to, not packing it in?
Yeah, I think this is a great group of guys. I think everybody's bought in. I think it's unfortunate our record doesn't display how committed we are and how well we've been playing together. But I think this team, I don't think the wins and losses are defining this team. I think we just all want to see each other play our best football, and I think, it's football. We might get knocked down and things like that, but I think the testament of this team is throughout adversity, we always have each other's back, and I think that's what football is all about.
I know you might have been asked this, but what were some of the things that you guys looked back on after the USC game that you guys kind of want to fix?
Yeah, I think it was just the finishing. I think I guess the biggest takeaway I could take away from that game is when you're playing guys like Mekhi Lemon and high level quarterbacks, the room for errors is really small. And that's just what it comes down to, is how perfect can you be, how perfect can you finish the play. And when you're playing those top teams like that, you can't leave 2 or 3 plays out there. You got to be exact on every moment, and you never know when your number is going to be called and when they're going to need you to show up, and that's why you got to be ready. And I think that's when it starts from practice. You got to maximize each opportunity, and as Desmond King told us, every play is critical because you never know which play can win or lose the game.
I was going to ask you about Desmond. I know he's been around the program a lot, going back to the spring even. Just I know how much, especially you guys from Michigan, look up to him. Just what have you taken from his tutelage and what it feels like he's a coach in waiting.
No, Desmond King, he's a great guy. I credit him to even the reason why I come to Iowa. I remember, getting offered from Iowa, and I'm like, I knew about Iowa. Obviously, they beat Michigan, and it was at 2015 and 2016. And I knew obviously about the program, and I talked to him, as being someone from Michigan, went there, came on the field, started, and never looked back. And I just remember talking to him about, development and Coach Parker. And I remember him saying just great words about Coach Parker, great words about Coach Ferentz. And then, got to meet him. I think it was maybe my 2nd or 3rd year, in person, after talking on the phone a few times. And, especially just this past year, him being around in the spring, being around during fall camp and even in the season, just giving us the guidance, being a guy who's, been in your shoes and then, competed at the highest level. He's all the things that, you look at wanting to be an Iowa DB. And he's really just paved the way. And I think the biggest thing, too, is he just kind of supported us and reminded us, that, it's football, you're going to get knocked down, but the most important thing is the response. I think that's just the testament of this team. We're all about the response, and we're just trying to get better each and every play.
And how